Hi, my name is Kristen Hackett, and this is my Learning Teaching Interaction number 2 for my Family 445 practicum class. So I'm going to talk about the Family Life Education chapters 4 through 7 first, and then I will go into the church handbook. Chapter 4 is designing effective instruction, and I loved this chapter because it went into great detail about how to figure out how to teach and what to do. And I loved M. David Merrill. He's a professor of instructional technology at Utah State University, and he came up with CDT, or component display theory. And I loved the things that he talked about. He talked about 4 major things, and the first one he talked about was exploratory generality, which is where the teacher talks about a general idea and kind of begins their lesson that way. And he said a clear, direct, simple expression of the principle is a good way to start teaching, and I really liked that. Then he goes into expository instances, which is telling a story about the general idea and kind of bringing them together. And then he talks about inquisitory generality. And this step is where the teacher has the student repeat or parrot back the principle that they are being taught, and allows and encourages the students to do that in their own words and in their own way so that they can kind of understand what they're talking about. And then he talks about balance, and I love balance because I remember going to classes, church classes and school classes, where all the teacher did was lecture, and they're super duper boring, and you don't really learn anything. It feels like your mind just kind of tunes things out. So I feel like having a good balance between the teacher's knowledge and what they can bring, and also the students' experiences, really is a good way of teaching, and it really helps that. I also liked his principles of instructions. He talks about addressing real problems, activating existing knowledge, using demonstration, because that can be really powerful, and applying the new knowledge, and then integrating the new knowledge into the learner's actual world. So I really liked all of those. That was chapter 4. Chapter 5 is engaging an audience. And I liked this because we really do need to engage with our audience if we want our students to learn anything. And he talked about talked about relevance, respect, and participation. And I love what Knowles said. He said, in conventional education, the student is required to adjust himself or herself to an established curriculum. In adult education, the curriculum is built around the student's needs and interests. And I really like that, because what you're teaching these students is something that they need. So make it relevant to them, and I love that. Be respectful of them and seek for their participation, and I feel like they'll get more out of the class. I really liked the tips that they gave for drawing out participation. Number 1 was show respect for students' efforts, skills, challenges, and experiences, and listen to your students. I really liked that. Number 2, let the students be creative in solving their problems. And number 3, if you as a good educator disagrees with what one of your students says, find ways to honor the student's effort and then suggest other possibilities. Don't just come right out and say, you're wrong, that's complete, honor the ways that they're trying to put forth the effort, and then find possible good solutions. Chapter 6 is about teaching skills and tools that you can learn. And I love this because it talked about a ton of different tools that you have at your disposal as a teacher. It talked about the fishbowl, buzz groups, using personal narratives and stories of life. It talked about skills training, which I really liked, which was describe the skill, model the skill, practice the skill in a non-stressful setting, receive reinforcement and corrective feedback, and then use that skill in a real life setting. And I love that. Talked about family councils, which I practice in my home and love family councils. They're a great way for families to get together and meet, solve problems, celebrate successes, do a bunch of different things. And I love those in my home. Role-playing, object lessons, books, magazines, videos, computer, music. I mean, there's a ton of different things that you can use as a teacher at your disposal that will help bring in that participation, and I really liked that. Chapter 7 was working with diverse audiences and just understanding who your audience is. If there are cultural differences that you're going to be expecting, try to learn about those cultures and make sure you're being sincere in what you're teaching. Different cultures have different ways of learning. They have different ways in which they value the individual, value family units. I mean, there's a ton of different things. So just knowing your audience is a really good idea. And also just understanding that diversity is not just your ethnic group. There's a lot of diversity in family life. There are some people that grew up in great homes that had a great childhood, and then there are others that suffered from abuse and poverty and parental disagreements and stress, and the size of your family depends on kind of what your family life was like, and what you believed, what you were taught to believe has a big impact on your life. So just understanding all of that and knowing all of that is really important. Going on to the teaching, the Gospel Handbook. I loved this because it talked about the role of the student, the teacher, and using the Holy Ghost as the teacher. And I love that. And I know that the Holy Ghost seems like something you might use just for church, but I disagree with that because I've used it in many different settings, and it's all, the Holy Ghost has always guided me in great ways, even when it wasn't religious. So the role of the Holy Ghost is, and I really love how this quote from the text, the most important thing a teacher can do to have the Spirit is to live the gospel and then to seek the influence of the Holy Ghost through prayer. And I love that. We can seek the Holy Ghost regardless of the situation that we are teaching in. The role of the student, it said, each person has a responsibility for his or her own gospel learning and living, and each will ultimately be judged by how they fulfill that responsibility. Students need to know they have a responsibility. It's important that they come prepared and that they come knowing that it's up to them to learn. The teacher can teach all they want. They can use all of these great ideas and have all of this great material and have participation, have all of this, but if the student doesn't want to learn, there's really nothing that the teacher can do. And the role of a teacher is to prepare yourself. Be prepared mentally, spiritually, all of those things. Be prepared in what you're going to do and kind of know your outline. Decide what you're going to teach and how you're going to teach. That's really important. Knowing what your purpose is and what you're really trying to get across, and then build from that purpose on how you're going to teach. What are the best ways to teach the audience and what you're engaging? Establish and maintain an appropriate setting for learning, and I really liked that as well. I loved that this also went on to different ways in which you could teach. True stories, make sure you present the instruction portion of the lesson, use different methods to teach. Questions and discussions, use visual, audio, music, object lessons, pictures, do group work. I mean, there's a ton of different things that they gave you, and I really like that both the books gave us different ways in which we could teach. I really liked that a lot. I also really liked just learning more about how to be a better teacher and how to be a better student. I enjoyed this reading a lot, and I hope that this helped. That's the end of my presentation. Thanks.